is the moment we've all been waiting for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to rumble!
Why are some people so destructive? Why are people destroying things in a matter of minutes that took years to make, that stood for centuries, and people are just tearing them apart and tearing them down in some kind of cathartic eruption of rage? Why are some people so destructive? That's the question I'm asking you. You can answer me on 07491 751 203. I'm also posing the question to Saj. He's normally got his own view and answers for most questions. Hello, Saj.
Hello, Tiger.
Welcome. Are you destructive or creative or a bit of both?
A bit of both.
Yin and yang, eh? Do you think we need that as a human being, as a human race? Do we need to have the creative force and the destructive force? I'm reminded very much of the Hindu gods. I think it's Vishnu. Is Vishnu the destroyer and Brahma, the creator. Every culture has this idea of yin and yang, of create and destroy. I always thought it's much better to create than destroy. But you think they're equally important?
I mean, look at the great artist Van Gogh. He cut off his ear to rebuild.
Wow. That's a good one. Yeah, one of the most creative minds of all time was destructive. He cut his ear off to make something else. Maybe in order to create, you have to destroy. Do you think that? I never looked at it that way. That's interesting. What point was he making when he cut his ear off? Because people just sort of laugh at it as a talking point and proof that he'd gone senile with old age. I don't know, was he old? He'd gone mad anyway. But maybe that was his genius.
Some say he's still alive in Cuba, but that's another story. Basically, he revolutionized cutting your ear. No one cut ears before him. No famous person cut their ear off, so that's what he's mostly known for.
Well, different cultures cut off different parts of their body for different reasons. Body modification has always been around, but modifying the body is very different from destroying a piece of it, no? And in the chat, we got Pleb Enforcement already saying, if you're pro pulling down statues, you're incredibly weak. You know what they did at the start of the Cultural Revolution in China? Well, hopefully we'll come on to that. Is it a sign of weakness to pull down a statue? Or rip your ear off, or do anything destructive? Is it people trying to show a show of strength? Are they actually exhibiting their own weakness?
I mean, we're all human beings at the end of the day, and we all have ways of dealing with things. Some people like to pull out the alcohol bottle, go for like a riz, go for like, on a binge of drugs and stuff, all of these things that people justify as a remedy to escape. So everyone's weak in a sense of having a lack of motivation to survive,
But a lot of very intelligent people, a lot of very creative people, a lot of creative geniuses have that self-destruct button and they hit the bottle, as you say, all the drugs. Is it something about the genius that borders madness and they abuse their body? Do they press that self-destruct button? What is it that leads people like Gaza, like George Best, like Iron Mike Tyson, like Diego Maradona, all these great supreme athletes become destructive to their own self?
I think the insecurities of dealing with fame.
And here's a question from Pleb Enforcement. Is suicide a strength?
I guess in a way you got to be brave to do it. So
some people say, and I've heard it mentioned, that it's not a weakness, it's a sign of being strong for too long. All religions condemn suicide. It's certainly something we'd never want to promote or idolize as a sign of strength. But I think it's a situation where society has failed. If somebody has found themselves at such a low point that they want to literally destroy themselves, we've failed as a society, haven't we? Have we neglected that person? And there's suicide and there's suicide. People who go on hunger strike and vow to fast till the point of death. I mean, that's some kind of strength, isn't it? But it's still this act of aggression, the ultimate act of aggression on your own body in the name of a protest. Saj, have you got the screen up? Because I want to run a couple of clips and have your take on it. We've got some footage here from Afghanistan. This is going back 20 years or so. So we're going to run the clip. Here we go. These are the ancient statues of Buddha in Afghanistan. And there they go. There they go. Destroyed. Destroyed forever thousands of years old. 3, 2, 1, boom. Who did it? Who do you think did it?
Taliban.
Good guess, correct. The Taliban in around 1999 destroyed these ancient Buddhist statues that had been in Afghanistan for thousands of years. They predate Islam, and the Taliban, with their literalist, fanatical interpretation of their religion, said these are idols. This is a form of idol worship, and we need to destroy them. Shameful, I think. A shameful act and a sad day. But maybe some people can tell me why that was a good thing. Why would you need to destroy images that I don't think anybody was worshipping? And if they were, wouldn't that be their own business? Why do you need to destroy something?
Yeah.
What would you have been against it, Saj, if you'd had a final say in the matter?
What would I have done?
No, just what's your take on it? If you lived in Afghanistan at the time and your government, are they a government, decided to destroy that?
A friend of mine is very I wouldn't say pro-Taliban, but he feels like the Taliban need to be the Pakistan army. He blames them for doing a lot of unjust things around, Pakistan, for example, and he gets into debates with his own family over it because it's a very sensitive subject, and he takes it real personal because he's from that kind of background and heritage. So someone like that's closer to home, I am still kind of like just looking at it from the outside, I feel like there's many. I mean, look at Boko Haram, and many other groups of different types of Taliban type of groups just around all of these different types of countries that are all enforcing their kind of ideologies and their ways. Will it stop? Maybe not, because they seem to have that fear inside people, If you get near us or get around us, we'll show you what we could do, So it's kind of scary at the same time that these kind of groups are out there enforcing their type of ideology so freely,
Yeah, and again, it's a show of strength, but are they actually strong? And Pleb Enforcement's also asking, when you resist a justified arrest, is that a strength, even if it costs you your life? It's kind of like the dog that barks the loudest. If you have to show off about how strong you are you actually strong at all? And there's an ancient proverb that says we must appear weak when strong and strong when weak. It's only the very weak that need to flex their muscles and show off how strong they are.
Yeah, I mean, to your experience in MMA, have you come across these type of fighters that come in the ring, or do you have a certain type of respect when you get in the ring? How is MMA, would you say, compared to boxing and other? Is there any difference in the styles of how people fight and come into the ring, or do they have their egos still?
One of the greatest fighters of all time, Fedor Emelianenko, a Russian MMA fighter, used to always come in the ring very humbly. He would touch gloves, barely looking the guy in the eyes, head down. He's just there to get on with it. He would let his fists and his wrestling do the talking. There was no bravado, no exaggeration, and that worked for him. Other fighters have this style of intimidating you before you even get in the ring. I remember a boxing coach telling me in the early days when he watched Henry Cooper versus Cassius Clay, as he was back then, the energy of the athletes entering the ring was completely different. Cooper had his shoulders hunched and his head down. Ali was jumping up and down, even though Henry Cooper gave a good account of himself against Muhammad Ali twice. Ali was bouncing up and down on his way to the ring. He was bouncing several feet up in the air. He had this energy that just looked electric. And when you see a fighter like that, you do start assessing it in your mind, thinking, "Oh my God, he looks wide awake." I've never been one for mind games. I remember getting into the ring once, and the opponent, amateur fighters, you don't know your opponent until the day. Very often, you won't know until you pitch up at the event. And maybe when you're even in the ring, and we got in the ring, and we looked across, and this guy was a completely ripped, short, stocky guy. He looked really big and strong. And my trainer said to me, "Look at him. You need to look at him." As if I wasn't like looking him in the eyes. He was like, "Yeah, you need to look over at him to assert your dominance." And things like eye contact, staring your opponent in the eye during the fight, it can give you an edge, but the real edge is your technique and your strength and your stamina. But mental strength and mind games, it can go a long way. What do you think, Sad? You've competed in certain levels of sport, haven't you? What have you found works in competition?
Like I was gonna say, for example, I've had a fight in the past. I was mentioning to someone this before, and it was just some stupid thing that happened where it got planned. So the fight got planned like a week before, and said, "Look, you're gonna fight this guy to settle your differences in the park."
So this is a fist fight, unofficial, no rules street fight.
No rules. We had a problem, and then the problem escalated. So it was like, "Fine, you guys need to sort it out. Get in the fight, get in the park, and fight it out like men." Now I had a week of mental preparation, which was really playing mind games with me, because I'm the type of guy that rather just get it over and done with rather than wait, And the night before, I was second guessing, and just things were running into my mind, And I was just wondering, imagine that was just one fight for me, but imagine every fight a professional fighter has. I heard that some fighters, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Mike Tyson, said that when they come to the ring, when they're training before the night before, they got nerves, but when they actually walk into the ring, they get that adrenaline rush of competing, and all of the nerves go.
Yeah,
the nerves would be there a lot.
No, once the fight started, I think most fighters will tell you everything's fine. It's the waiting game, and for me, the shorter notice for the fight, the better. The longer the training camp, the more time you got to think about it. It's funny. It's a funny old game. But let's roll the next clip, Saj. All right? Watching the screen.
Academic has put forward contentious plans to remove his body on the grounds that worshipping his grave constitutes idolatry, which is banned by the religion. Now, not only do they want to remove his body and put it in an anonymous grave, but they also want to destroy the Green Dome, the famous Green Dome that houses, or that's the roof of the building in which it's housed, and a number of the buildings around it.
What kind of support does he have here, do you suppose?
Well, it's been a 61-page document that has been submitted to the king and to the other people that supervise the building. Here's what Dr. Alawi, director of the Islamic Heritage Research Foundation, has to say about it. Quotes, "People visit the chambers, which are the rooms where the Prophet's family lived, and turn towards the burial chamber to pray. Now they want to prevent pilgrims from attending and venerating the tomb because they believe this is shirk or idolatry. But the only way that they can stop people visiting the Prophet is to get him out and into the..."
Okay, I'm not sure if the audio was loud enough on the clip there, but that was footage from Saudi Arabia where the clerics, the Salafi ulama, the clergy, are desperate to destroy Muslim relics such as the house where the Prophet lived. So it's not surprising that radical Muslims want to destroy Buddhist statues, maybe, but it seems that there's a certain mindset within the Muslim world that's also set on destroying even Islamic heritage. I wonder why that is.
I think I know. I think this was been going on for years, though. I think it was just a matter of they felt like people were doing bid'ah and worshipping the prophet's grave. And I think at one point they wanted to bulldoze over it or do something to remove so many things there, which was so crazy, like to even think that. But they call the shots, it's their country, and if they wanted to, they would.
I wonder why people of that mindset have climbed to the top in Saudi Arabia.
The Wahhabi sect.
Yeah.
That mindset is because they've always been like that. I'll tell you, there was a guy that said, basically there was a guy that, he goes, when he first converted to Islam, he was a rapper, and he turned to Islam, and now he's finally feels like he's at peace. And he said, he goes, the worst thing you can do as a Muslim is to kind of judge another Muslim's sins, like, oh, he drinks, oh, he smokes, he does this, he does that, because that would only steer them away from the faith. So he said that when he first entered the masjid, he was getting told off about his jeans being not to his ankles, like up to his ankle, they should be like not dragging, they should be up to his ankle length.
Yeah, okay. Someone was picking on his faults.
Yeah, which the Wahhabi group, as soon as he said that, he knew he was explaining it was a certain group, and I knew it was Wahhabi because I've been in the same position. So basically, the moral of the story was he was trying to say that you don't do that, because especially if you're a new Muslim, you end up, some new Muslim would be like, you know what, and he did, he goes, I got put off after that, and I just thought, what's going on, like, why am I getting told this, why am I getting like kind of picked on about jeans, a pair of jeans? And then years later he said that he kind of just saw them, he went to the same mosque with a friend of his, unknowingly he walked in, and then he saw the same people there, and he was like, oh no, he felt uncomfortable, and then he managed to just get over it all, and they get along now, they're friends now, him and that guy that told him that. But still, it was just the intensity of just the nitpicking on things rather than just accepting someone to come to the faith from another background is like amazing as it is, and then the first thing you're going to do is question something that they probably don't know about anyway because they're new,
Is that again the destructive gene? It's easier to say you're doing something wrong than well done for what you've done right.
Well, with the Wahhabi group I remember going to a mosque local to me, it's still there, and I remember, I'll give you two examples. One example was I was praying, and there was like, I finished praying, and the guy goes to me, brother, you should have not done that. And I said, what do you mean? And he said to me, well, you prayed, and there's a clock over there, and there's a chair over there. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, and this was Fajr prayer as well, so you're already tired, and it's early in the morning. And he's like, well, basically, you're not meant to pray when there's an object ahead of you. And I thought, there's always an object somewhere. There's a clock, there's this, there's that, There's stuff always around, and I just couldn't believe it. I was shocked at what I was hearing, but you'd only get that type of mindset in a Wahhabi type of masjid. You won't find that in every other masjid. There won't be that bizarre, I call that bizarre. And then one guy, he said to me one day, he goes, is your brother an atheist? And I go, sorry? He goes, your brother, is he an atheist? I goes, no, why do you say that? And I was young, I don't even think I knew what the word atheist meant. And he goes, oh, because I saw him wearing a t-shirt the other day.
You're wearing a t-shirt, so you must be an atheist.
Yeah,
My goodness.
I mean, they get very, they say, they can get very loud about it and say, you're looking like, you guys dressed like David Beckham and 50 Cent, and you guys are so this and that, you young guys are this and that. And it's like, everyone was young once,
Well,
and
most people.
Yeah.
And is the problem of having a clock in front of you while you're praying a paranoia about the idea that you're praying to the clock or you're worshipping it, just like having a Buddhist statue in Afghanistan means some people might worship it?
Yeah, his gripe was the chair. I said the clock because the clock was an example of another object there. But his thingy was the chair. He said the chair, but the chair was like where the imam would sit if he had to. It's right at the front of the mosque. But to be honest, like it wasn't. It might have been that, but I never really had any interest to even. I was just shocked by the ridiculous. And in Reading, like where we are now, there's like the South Street Mosque, which they're more Sufi type of sect, so they kind of like they do a lot of celebrate the Prophet's birthday, and then they do like zikr, and they do certain things that like some people say dancing, and certain things that are claimed as real like bid'ah to do in the mosque, meaning the Wahhabis and stuff. So they're always going toe to toe with them. And on social media, there was a big war once, like for ages. I don't know if it still exists, but on Facebook, just back and forth with these two people from the same mosque, different mosques, argue with each other over who's in the right and who's in the wrong.
And if another mosque is doing something different, whose business is that for another mosque to point it out? Should you not just live and let live? Or should you correct somebody if you think they're doing something wrong?
You should, but unfortunately for me, even going to another masjid, for example, going to a Wahhabi masjid, you get that feeling and that vibe of a very looked at, very who's this guy type of thing, is he one of us type of thing. And I remember when I first got into not when I first got into my faith, when I was in my young teens and I started to get deep into what I thought was getting deep into religion, I started to become arrogant when I started to go to that mosque. I don't know, just generally I started to be very rude to my mom. I didn't talk to her for ages. I started to have this kind of energy about me that was very, I know it all and no one else is on the right path but me type of feeling. And I realized after like a year or something, this is wrong. Like, what am I doing? Like, I can't be this harsh. What's gotten into me? And I just felt like I was becoming more or less one of them type of guys without even knowing it. No one actually sat me down and spoke to me. It was just me going there and just seeing maybe people and just getting that type of energy from it. And it just rubbed off on me, and I started to feel like I was kind of a Wahhabi type of guy where I became very hateful and very aggressive and very negative. And I thought, and any man that knows Islam knows that, our Prophet's a perfect example. You just don't, that's not what it's about. You can't be like that. You can't be that type of person, You
were becoming destructive rather than creative. A lot of people ask about radicalization and was someone radicalized. I'm not saying you were being radicalized, but you're saying that your behavior and your outlook on life was changing over a period of time. When we hear the word radicalization, I always think of a very quick process, like, someone changed overnight. They went away for a few weeks and they came back and they've been radicalized, and it happened quickly. But it seems like this mindset had its effect on you over a long period of time. Were they just chipping away at you, at your attitude? How did it happen?
It just became like, was it an overnight thing? I guess it felt like that because for the brief period I was just becoming. There was a white guy actually that went to the same kind of teachings, or not teachings. He was the same sect, and when he converted to Islam, he said to his mom and dad, I'm not staying inside the house, I'm sleeping in the shed because I don't want to be around you kuffars, you disbelievers.
Wow.
I can't be around you guys. He disowned. It sounds funny, but it's true. He said straight away, he said, like, I don't want to. He just disowned his family. I know another white guy that got really upset when Bin Laden, aka Tim Osman, was killed. Supposedly, allegedly killed.
The first time or the second time or the 10th time?
The last time.
Okay, the final time, when he died for the final time. Who said that Muslims don't believe in reincarnation? He had a lot of funerals, that guy. All right, we're going to roll the next clip, Saj. So, fingers on buzzers and look at the screen. Hopefully we'll hear it well enough.
ISIS is really, when you talk to
Here we
people
go.
at the
This
UN
is
and
from
elsewhere,
Syria.
attacking a culture. They are killing, in the words of one archaeologist, the past, the present, and the future in many ways of a country, because these sites were hugely important sources of revenue for tourists in the future for a Syrian state, and they're killing the history and really doing this in many ways because they want to erase what exists as a civilization there now.
Yeah. ISIS doing what they do best, destroying things. When I was in Syria, I didn't have the opportunity to visit that city because it was one of the last, not strongholds, but areas where there were pockets of ISIS fighters still that the Syrian Arab army had quite cleared out. And it was very traumatic, the images of these ancient sites being destroyed. Again, it's absolutely infuriating to watch it. But is there a sense of, well, this is our country and if we want to destroy it, we can?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's like this is our land, and we could do what we want with it. If we want to put something new, we would. If we want to take something old out, we would. Who's gonna stop us, you know?
Well, and the sad thing about that is that the majority of ISIS fighters are not from Syria or Iraq. It began as the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, but they're foreigners. They're from every corner of the world apart from Syria. Many of them don't even speak Arabic, don't understand the local culture, the local history, and they're imposing this different, warped version of a religion. You mentioned it earlier, and it's an interpretation of the religion that has only really been around for 200 years. Now, people that follow it will say we're trying to go back to how our religion was in the early days. Maybe there are good intentioned people that are doing that, but there is a certain mindset within this strain of that religion that is very destructive, that is very hateful, and it's destroying countries like Iraq and Syria. And it's a big shame that they have the monopoly on publicity.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen them on Eid Day, a day, where every Muslim should be celebrating peacefully. I've seen them myself with my own eyes on Eid Day shouting at another mosque that they used to go to before they got their own mosque. These Salafi Muslims, they were shouting at the fellow Wahhabi saying to everyone, why are you going there to pray? Don't go pray there with them kuffars, pray with us. And then it was just embarrassing because they had about 12 people praying with them on that day, and they got very vengeful about people going the other direction to pray at the other mosque. And it was like really like on Eid Day, they're really gonna like be like this, And Dadasha just said that she said that no one shouldn't and can't change history, but I disagree with that because I'll give you an example. Do you know Chris Benoit?
Oh yeah, Chris Benoit. I'm familiar with the wrestler.
Do you know his story?
No, tell us the story. But I've been told it before, but it's worth another tell. Go on.
Okay, so basically he like many other wrestlers got into steroid rage, he got kind of taken steroids and stuff, and then there's many conspiracy theories like many other famous people before they die, what really happened, and he's known to just have killed his wife, his kid, and I don't know if it's another kid. I think just his wife and his kid, right? Now, in wrestling, like, he was looked at as such a great wrestler, right? And some wrestlers to this day try to say you can't separate the art from the man, He was a good wrestler. You can't say he wasn't, which is true, but then it reflects on you as a man, what you did in history. So basically, the company never knew what the story was. They thought it was just a fatal death. So the next night on air, they paid a tribute to a tribute and everything, you know. All the wrestlers came out and had their interviews about him, said he was a great guy, cried and everything, yeah.
Little did they know that he was a murderer.
Yeah, and then the next day they knew that he was a murderer. They've literally wiped him from every, like, you can't even mention the guy's name. You can't even, like, I don't know if he's in the DVDs anymore, and he plays some pivotal parts.
Is this your argument for how you can erase history by getting rid of Benoit? It's like he never existed.
Because they've blackballed him, and he is a part of history, you know?
Well, is that what they're trying to do with the statues of Edward Colston, with Winston Churchill, with the countless other names who had an impact on history, but because we are judging them by today's morals, we're trying to erase them from history?
Yeah, I mean, it's like Mandela, right? He'll always be remembered, but
the Mandela effect.
His story would always live on, if that makes sense.
Yes. And he was the first to say, I'm not perfect.
It's like when people did this whole burn a Quran day, you know? That the Quran is a historical, you know, book from many, many years ago, but there's so many Qurans, but it's like I don't know what their intention was, just to burn it, but I don't know what they were going to get out of that, but the religion and the faith would always be here, but it's just like a kind of way to say, oh, we're going to try remove Islam as much as we can. But
I think they were hoping that some angry Muslims would react badly and make themselves look bad, and I think a few Muslims did do that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Let's roll another clip, and there's another comment that we'll just have a little look at. Political enforcement is saying, Mandela sanctioned necklacing. Why isn't he cancelled? Lol. Yeah, well, Nelson Mandela said that he wasn't perfect, and he atoned for what he would describe as sins, and he wanted reconciliation. He wanted peace and reconciliation. He didn't say that everything he did was perfect. He wasn't a saint, but he's somebody who could have taken revenge, but instead chose forgiveness. And I think that is the greatest thing that Nelson Mandela did, despite all the great things he did. And let's roll the video. And here we are in Syria. These icons were damaged. Famous YouTuber back when he had a haircut. By the terrorists that took over the church in 2013, yeah?
Yeah, 2013. Yeah, also you can see the damage in this icon.
There's St. George.
On Shrine of St. Tekla. This is some old icons. Unfortunately, some of them damaged and burned. Yeah. You can see here.
Yes, obviously that's quite sad to watch. That's footage from Mandela in Syria, the Christian town, majority Christian town that was overrun with Al-Qaeda fighters during the Syrian crisis and had many relics destroyed. You saw images there of the Virgin Mary destroyed by ISIS, defaced, other holy images and statues wrecked. And there's a real sense of sadness from all Syrians, Christian and Muslim alike, that these foreigners, and that's what the vast majority of ISIS combatants are, foreign fighters that descended on a situation they knew nothing about and imposed their warped literalist version of their religion on an ancient culture, an ancient people that have coexisted for centuries. There's even mosques and churches that function out of the same building. A real last bastion of coexistence in the Middle East. And again, it's this destructive mindset that just wants to destroy rather than create. Someone said that destructiveness is the idiot's creativity. It's so much easier. It's so much easier to feel like you're being successful when you're destroying something than when you're creating something. Creating something takes years and years, dedication, original thought, something that very hard to come by, and destruction just needs nothing. Pull a trigger, press a button, fire a weapon. So it's just the easy way out. But I think as we are becoming more and more units of consumption rather than production, we are just used to eating everything, metaphorically. We sit in front of the screen and just like, swipe. We're just consuming. Everything's going in. We're not giving anything out. So creating something becomes much more difficult. So all these problems around the world are symptoms of problems I think we're all facing on a smaller scale in our daily lives. And Dasha is saying, oh wow, Lessons for Life, lockdown had a big impact on your hairstyle. Yes, it did. Yes, it did. And Dadasha also says, I know some people are trying to destroy historical places, to destroy the impact of such a country, to destroy history. Yeah, destroy. But Thea, were you able to see that, Saj? Did you have it on the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the good old days.
Sad.
And it just.
Very sad. It looks like it's just a little part of history that was in that area just tarnished,
A bit like when Notre Dame burnt down. That was a piece of history destroyed, but that was a natural disaster, and in a way that's just another part of history. And maybe this is just another part of history, and ISIS destroyed the church and the people rebuild it. When you look at it, when you take a step back, it is just another part of history, but when you're caught up in the moment, it's very emotive. And there's Jordan M tuning in. Hello, Jordan M. Hello. It's, yeah, we're at a turning point, I think, in history when a lot of things are changing very quickly, and we're reacting emotionally to it. Obviously, watching a church get smashed up is very sad at the time. But if in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, we all learn from it and we become more united and more respectful of each other's religion as a result of seeing this, then maybe in the long run it will be a good thing. But I'm clutching at straws to try to get a positive out of such a negative. But let's roll the next clip, Saj. Are you ready?
Yes, Tiger.
Here we go.
Chinese youth organized
Cultural Revolution.
Guards, a paramilitary force concentrated mostly in Chinese cities. And with Mao's blessing, they wreaked havoc in the name of cultural revolution.
Yeah.
Their mission was to destroy the four olds.
Old culture, old ideology, old customs, old traditions. All of the olds must be destroyed.
The idea was basically to tear down the vestiges of Imperial China and rewrite history centered around Mao Zedong, renaming buildings and streets, destroying cultural sites, and violently humiliating and often torturing and murdering anyone they accused of opposing Mao's ideas, which they plastered all over the cities and carried in their pockets in the form of Mao's Little Red Book.
Yeah, the Little Red Book and Chairman Mao's cultural revolution. They destroyed everything old and wanted to bring in the new, and it was very much a cult of personality revolving around Chairman Mao and his Little Red Book, and very much a Chinese interpretation of Marxism. And many have tried it. In Libya, Colonel Gaddafi had the Little Green Book, where he tried to merge some kind of Pan-African nationalism with elements of Islam with Marxism and internationalism. In China, it was Maoism and his Little Red Book. So every country where Marxism or communism has spread has had its own sort of take on it. But that would seem to be a very destructive force when it came in China. You've never been to China, have you, Saj?
Almost. teaching thing out there, and then it got cancelled. Well, I cancelled it. But I'm more of a Japan man, you know.
What? Really? Did you go? What held you back from travelling to China? I know Dardasha in the chat has been to China. Why couldn't you go? Why couldn't you go to China?
Oh, okay. Because basically, I was thinking of doing. I actually applied to work at a school, and then I found out very last second that the school. I don't know why. I normally read reviews before I go ahead with things, but for some reason I did everything backwards this time, and then right towards the bit where I was pretty much arranging to sort out my actual journey there, I looked at the reviews, and then I found out that they offer you a visa, a working visa, so they say, but then it's kind of comes with a catch where you don't really get it, or you're working out there illegally or something. It's like they're in on it, so they're getting you to teach English over there, but it's kind of like a dodgy way. So it just put me off, basically. That's why I didn't go.
So as much as China have turned their back on the West, they don't mind people teaching English. It's still sought after.
To be honest, like, it's one of those things that they would love to. I mean, from a business aspect, to know English and to have good English would be a very plus, I'd say, you know. So it'd probably be something else on their resume to have.
Another feather in your cap. All right, let's find out about AntiFur and whether or not they're anti-fascist and whether or not they're destructive. Let's roll the clip. Okay, there's AntiFur, who market themselves as anti-fascists. It's a very appealing name. And I'm not sure if I'm correct on this, but are the majority of AntiFur white? They're very strongly behind things like the Black Lives Matter movement and empowering minorities, but I get the impression that the majority of AntiFur themselves are white people, and that's just my observation. I don't have any stats on that. Have you come across any AntiFur types in America, Saj, on your travels?
Not really, because around the time I was leaving, they're a very new group, ain't they? Or they've been around?
I suppose they've emerged in the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah.
Really? Okay, so that's my first time hearing about them was through this whole thing with the George thingy.
They've been around. I think they've certainly been around since the time when Trump was running for election. That's 4 years ago now. So they've been on the scene. But the name, I think it's great marketing. Being against fascism is kind of like something everyone would want to agree with. But what if you're just another type of fascist? What if you're still using violence? What if you are doing false flag operations? What if you're inciting violence? Does that make you just as bad as the fascism that you claim to oppose?
Yeah, because there's some people already some other black people, celebrities, a couple of they're disowning the Black Lives Matter because they believe it's just a lot of people are white people, and they're just purposely doing it to kind of infiltrate a bad reputation on black people by going around smashing things and doing things out of the ordinary rather than protests and stuff to get the name of, I don't know, there's so much conspiracies inside more conspiracies when you look at it, you know. It's just crazy, like with the internet as well. Everyone's got their, I don't know, in the past, like that's the thing about the internet, man. It's kind of like making people a bit too conspiracy-ish, whereas before maybe people wouldn't have even thought of these things, but now you got videos and memes and everything so edited into people just seeing stuff like fake news and sharing it almost immediately, thinking it's true, you know. And then there's 100 million and thousands of followers that follow it all. It's dangerous, really.
Yeah, it's very easy to share something.
Yeah, but the greatest impact in this world, what do you think it is?
What's had the greatest impact?
Yeah, the greatest. Not the greatest impact. The greatest. I guess the greatest. Yeah, the thing that would
impact, influence.
In this world. Huh?
What's had the biggest influence on the world?
No, what would you say the greatest? The thing that would have the most impact in this world, what would you say the most impactful thing in this world?
Oh, that would be this YouTube channel, wouldn't it? Maybe. Or
influence, you know?
Influence. But what is influencing us? What is this influence you're talking about?
Okay, these are doing this over there. If you want to be against them, join this side. If you don't want to join this side, you're with the enemy. If you're with the enemy, then we hate you. No one's ever going to think for themselves nowadays. It's just like, let's just go ahead with everyone. People are too lazy to think, so people are thinking for them and being like, you know what, that join our group. If you're against the government, if you hate this and that, just join our group. We're liberal, we're free, blah blah blah. And then the right wing are saying the opposite, and it's just like everyone's picking a side, And then you got some people that are just like real, like, to me, when you don't vote, I find that very ignorant. I don't know what your take is on that.
When you don't vote?
Yeah.
Well, the people we mentioned earlier would tell you it's not allowed to vote. This is not from our religion. Why do you think it's important to vote?
What do you feel like about voting? Because I think it's very important to vote.
I've always said that. And I think in a country with democracy, you get the government you deserve. And you can complain about the government or you can change it. Same with the media. I'm guilty of this as well. We complain a lot about the media. If you don't like the media, change it. Stop buying the Sun newspaper if you don't believe their lies or they're peddling propaganda. That's what the people of Liverpool did. You can't sell a copy of the Sun in Liverpool. And if you don't like the media, because of the way they dealt with the Hillsborough disaster and the terrible lies that they told. If you don't like the media...
That's them being biased, That's them being biased. They didn't complain before, but now because it's hit home, they're going to be like boycotted. That's just being biased to their own town,
Well, if it takes getting beaten up to realise that the bully is beating people up, then maybe that's what you need to realise. How many of us realise something until it happens to us,
What do you think of the attitude of I don't want to vote, like the Yas Ali type of, I don't want to vote, what's the point? Nothing's going to happen, nothing's going to change, isn't it?
Well, I think you get the government you deserve, and when hardly anyone votes, extremists will always vote, and you'll end up with an extremist government because they will always vote, and they'll win when there's a low turnout. Adolf Hitler was elected to power democratically when there was a very low turnout, when voter apathy was at a high. So get out there and vote for someone to avoid that. But then again, are you endorsing a system that is broke? If you vote for the lesser of two evils, are you destined to get evil forever? I tend to agree with what you're saying, but I see the faults with our opinion. Who do you vote for, Saj?
What do you think about Boris Johnson's new biscuit thing that he's doing?
What's he doing?
You ain't seen it yet.
Not yet. Has he got a biscuit out?
Huh?
Has he developed a biscuit?
No, what he's done is he said that if you want to have these lovely biscuits from Australia, and he pointed them out, I forgot what the name are, and he put them out. He said that then you have to be okay with the trade deal. Something about the trading with Australians that would mean that we would get a certain Australian biscuits at a good price.
Wow.
To me, as silly as the guy can be, to me it's like a kind of sarcasm, British sense of humour that's probably needed right now in with all this going on. It's good to have a little laugh, but some people are just straight away taking it serious in the comments, like, oh, this guy's this guy's that. And some people are like, you'd understand the sense of humour if you, it was just off. You need to watch it and then try, and figure it out. It's just a little skit he's done.
So Boris Johnson got your vote the day he started talking about biscuits. I love it.
Yeah, no. He's got my kind of, I wouldn't say respect, but he shows a bit of human, when you get into when people become presidents and prime ministers and stuff, they have this aura about them where it's looked at as kind of like how Meghan Markle couldn't close the car door, that type of shit.
They're out of touch.
They're out of touch, and when you see them a bit in touch, like, I've seen little videos of Boris talking to people who are trying to, like, when you say hello to someone and you put your fist out to bump their fist. He's even done that with a couple of people, like young people. So it shows that he's kind of trying to be in touch. He's trying to be like the Ian Beale of Parliament,
Yeah, I think one of his redeeming qualities, if there are any, was that people could relate to him as a human being because he was such a buffoon and his hair was a mess and he waffles along like a posh schoolboy that he is. And I think a lot of that's very, very deliberate. And I believe he developed this accent that he has later in life anyway. It's all a bit of an act. I think he's very clever at creating the aura of a believable human being when it's all possibly a very clever act. I don't know. We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah.
All right, Saj. Well, look, it's almost time to roll the outro. But thank you for joining me. It's been superb. What's coming next for you? You've got your channel. What's next for you? You've got 30 seconds. Give it a little plug. Then we're out.
Next for me is we're working, when I say we, I mean me, myself, and I are working on a project of absolutely nothing, but there might be something that would come out of it. Just hang in there, guys, alright? All my 29 subscribers.
Superb.
Okay?
Superb. Wow. It's been Lessons for Life. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Saj. We'll do this all again soon. We'll try and go live regularly. Find us on Instagram as well and Twitter. What?
Did you hear about the Richmond Park ice cream incident?
What happened?
There was a whole load of crap going on earlier on, man. Today or yesterday, one of these days, yesterday or today, there was like this guy going around taking ice cream off everyone's hands. Like as soon as they were grabbing it, it wasn't. I thought it was a prank for TikTok, but it wasn't. It was an actual genuine crime.
Yeah, there's a lot of ice cream theft going on in the Richmond area.
YouTube it, yeah.
Be careful out there. Pleb Enforcement's laughing. He is one for laying down the law. Saj, Pleb Enforcement, Dardasha, anyone else that joined in and enjoyed it. We'll do it all again soon. This has been Lessons for Life. He's been Saj. We were here. And we are gone. Latest.
Champion of the world, the Gypsy King,